No fear, I'm standing right here. Eyes clear with my mind clear. Never look rear, only up. Knowing when to stop a fight isn't always easy. In fact, many might not understand just how tough the job can be. Referees have a ton of pressure put on them to make split-second judgment calls in the heat of the moment, so we tend to grant them a lot of leeway. We're all human, and we all make mistakes, so it's understandable to a degree when a referee makes a bad call every once in a while. The referee let it go up so long. Look, he's out cold there. However, there are some cases where it's so blatantly obvious it leaves us horrified at the aftermath. Although most fights are stopped when they need to be, there are a few that have left us wondering just what on earth the referee was thinking at the time. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Joe Warren versus Pat Grant competed against each other in a featherweight bout at Bellator 60 in 2012. The fight was for the Bellator Featherweight Championship, with Warren being the defending champion. During the fight, Warren ate a huge knee from Grant. Next came follow-up shots and another 2 knees to the head, dropping Warren to the canvas. At this point, it looked like the fight was going to be stopped. Even commentator Jimmy Smith was so confident the referee was going to call in favor of Pat Grant, he said, "This fight is going to be stopped right now. This is going to be stopped right now." To everyone's surprise, it wasn't. In fact, for the next 20 seconds, Pat Grant unleashed an onslaught of strikes onto Warren, who was clearly out on his feet, and dropped multiple times during the barrage. Some brutal uppercuts finally sealed the deal, but by then the damage had already been done. Warren ended up enduring roughly 40 unanswered blows, far more than any fighter should be expected to take. Asha Roacha versus Hannah Kemp. Asha Roacha and Hannah Kemp faced off at the Superfight League promotion in 2017. Early into the first round, Roacha went down to the mat with Kemp, securing a guillotine choke as she rolled into mount position. This is a good position for Asha to finish it. Look at this. The choke was sunk in tight, which was clear to everyone except the referee. Even the commentators were shouting that Kemp was out. "She's out. She's out," while referee Ellen Fernandez stood by, oblivious to this fact. Kemp's arms could be seen spazzing involuntarily at one point, with her body going into panic mode and twitching all over. It looked like she went flat. Shockingly, the referee picked up on none of these signs and mistakenly misread this as Kemp still being conscious. The corner had finally seen enough and took matters into their own hands, hopping over the cage and pulling Roacha off of Kemp. "Oh, Asha has got it. Oh, wait a minute." What was also shocking was referee Ellen Fernandez defending his actions, claiming, "I think it isn't fair to pick up one fight and focus on one negative and not speak about the positives." Fortunately, Kemp received no permanent damage. Derrick Lewis versus Travis Browne. In February of 2017, Travis Browne was paired off against knockout artist Derrick Lewis at UFC Fight Night 105. During the fight, Travis found some success, landing a few of his solid signature kicks. However, being the heavy-handed hitter that he is, Derrick Lewis answered back by dropping Travis to the canvas and following up with some nasty ground and pound. Browne was clearly out long before the last strike fell, but referee Mario Yamasaki, who was notorious for stopping fights too late, wasn't buying it. Mario Yamasaki stood by as he let Travis endure several hits to the chin before finally seeing enough to step in. As if getting knocked out wasn't enough, it got even worse for Travis after the fight when Derrick Lewis made a comment about his girlfriend and former UFC superstar Ronda Rousey, saying this: "Gabe Rieger versus Olaf Alonso hooked it up all the way back in 2004 at WC 12. Now, although it isn't always clear exactly at what point the fighters become unconscious during a submission, this fight wasn't one of those times. During the first round of their bout, Rieger managed to sink in a deep rear naked choke to Alonso, with the commentators declaring, seeing as how there was no way out for Alonso. Unfortunately for Alonso, they were correct. The fight was over, but not according to the referee. Alonso's body could be seen completely giving out, with his tongue protruding out of his mouth at one point. It appeared he briefly slipped in and out of consciousness on a few occasions before finally going limp. The entire time this was happening, Dave Rosenthal made no attempt to stop the fight. Despite Alonso going out multiple times, 20 seconds of getting strangled is what it took for the referee to finally call it off. Nunes versus Caio Silva. Nunes versus Caio Silva was set to go down as the main event of the Capanema Fight Combat event in Brazil. During the fight, Nunes seized and locked in a tight guillotine choke as Silva went in for a takedown. Nunes felt Silva giving out and even went so far as to verbally warn the referee Jorge Gomez that his opponent was unconscious. You would think this would be enough evidence for the ref to call the fight. Nope. Referee went over to check on Silva on 2 occasions, but saw no issue, leaving Silva's body lying there limp and motionless as Nunes continued to squeeze on his neck. This went on for around 20 seconds until Silva's brother had finally seen enough, panicking and vaulting over the cage to pull Nunes off. In the heat of the moment, he directed his anger toward Nunes, throwing a few punches at the fighter. An apology followed shortly after. Both men went over to check on Silva, as his body could be seen twitching on the canvas. It was later revealed that Gomez, a fighter himself with only limited experience of officiating fights, had actually been watching the event from the crowd and was only drafted in to referee the fight at last minute. A decision made all the more questionable by rumors that he'd been drinking beforehand. Sheila Bird versus Kim Coocher. Sheila Bird versus Kim Coocher were scheduled to fight at Eryk Combat in 2011, where Randy Coocher's ex-wife would fall prey to a rear leg scissor choke. During the opening round, Sheila Bird slipped in a slick scissor choke on Coocher, locking it in tight, big right hands being rained down by Sheila Bird. Coocher fought it off briefly, but would eventually be rendered unconscious, which was clear the moment her legs hit the canvas. The ref apparently wasn't buying it, and continued to allow her to be choked despite her body going completely limp. After checking Coocher's hand thoroughly for movement, the ref finally waved off the fight in favor of Bird. And that is it, she is out. Even after the fight was finished, Coocher's body continued to lay there frozen, scary stuff. Gary Goodridge versus Paul Herrera. Back in 1996 at UFC 8, Gary Goodridge made one of the most memorable and violent debuts in UFC history against Paul Herrera during the quarterfinals of a one-night tournament. From the opening bell, Herrera shot in on Goodridge for a takedown. Goodridge, being the bigger opponent, avoided the takedown while locking in a deadly submission known as the crucifix, and quickly Herrera shoots the leg. And Herrera is a very good grappler here. Goodridge went on to land some brutal elbows to the head of Herrera, with the first elbow seemingly knocking Herrera out. 7 more elbows followed before the ref finally saved Herrera from any more unnecessary damage. Oh, my elbows in number by Goodridge. Now before I go on, I feel like I should clarify that the referee who oversaw this bout, Big John McCarthy, is in my opinion the best referee in the business. McCarthy, who was still new to the fight game, was likely caught off guard given that this fight only lasted a quick 13 seconds. So I think we should grant him a pass on this one. Nevertheless, it was still a late stoppage which resulted in one of the most vicious knockouts in UFC history. Valentina Shevchenko versus Priscilla Cachoeira. UFC veteran Valentina Shevchenko came into the fight with Priscilla Cachoeira at UFC Fight Night 125 as a huge favorite, with many expecting her to earn a dominant victory. What no one realized was just how dominant the fight was going to be. In fact, it turned out to be one of the biggest mismatches in MMA as Shevchenko picked Cachoeira apart with her elite-level boxing. What started out as a beatdown on the feet would turn into a massacre on the ground, as Shevchenko brutalized Cachoeira with some bloody ground and pound. The fight was a bloodbath, one that would have justified referee Moriola Miyazaki stepping in on multiple occasions. Yet for whatever reason, he allowed the fight to proceed. Valentina Shevchenko. Shevchenko finally closed the show by finishing Cachoeira with a rear naked choke, sparing her from any more unnecessary damage. And Miyazaki defending his actions by saying he wanted to let Cachoeira be a warrior, but shortly after admitted he would go back to referee school. Yamazaki defended his actions by saying he wanted to let Cachoeira be a warrior, but shortly after admitted he would go back to referee school.